Welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. My name is Jerry Snyder. As a health, wellness, and sports performance coach, my goal each week is to bring you experts to help you take control of your health and build your self-confidence. Thanks for including me today on your journey to better health. I want to say thank you to Social Media Cowboys for sponsoring this week's episode of the Confidence Through Health podcast. If you need help with a website, if you need social media needs for your business, if you need help with AdWords, SEO, all those things that you know you should be doing, but you are too busy to do or you're too confused about, they are the experts that you need in your corner. If you're interested in launching a podcast, such as mine, they help me edit my podcast and do a fantastic job making sure that all of the technical side of it is handled and we launch a nice, neat, edited podcast episode each week. So I want to thank Social Media Cowboys for their continued sponsorship of the Confidence Through Health podcast. You can find them at socialmediacowboys.com, or you can find them as well with other sponsors at confidencethroughhealth.com. So I want to thank you, Jaya Jaya Myra, for being a guest on the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor.
So, I heard about you in all the stuff that you're doing in the mind-body connection, in like helping people get past pretty much the things that are keeping them stuck in their life and they're not getting the results they want. They're not happy with what they want. But you came about this and I love when I have guests on that, like, you were following a different path with life and then something came along. You quote unquote fixed yourself and then threw yourself into a whole nother trajectory to make an impact in other people's lives.
Yes, that is 100% accurate.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about why this is so important to you?
Definitely, I can. So I actually started my career as a research scientist. I was studying molecular biology, doing cancer research. I was a hair's breadth away from having my PhD. Essentially, all my coursework was more than completed, and I was just working on my thesis at that point. And I came down with really debilitating fibromyalgia. And Western medicine essentially couldn't help me. I had known from the time that I had been a child that I had wanted to work towards healing other people. And see, I think that's the key, right? I told God, I want to heal people, right? So I thought medicine or science, okay, these are the best routes for that. Well, I ended up having children when I was in college. I didn't think medical school was going to be the most viable route, having two young children. So I'm like, let me go into research instead. So I did that, but the universe had totally other plans for me. I got sick with fibromyalgia, and Western medicine just made everything a lot worse for me. It didn't even make it incrementally better. It made it worse. So I'm sitting here saying, well, what do I do now with this? And I had recently started on a new spiritual path trajectory, more mindfulness, meditation, Eastern philosophy based. And I had already seen how helpful it had been in alleviating anxiety, depression, a lot of these common problems that people face. And I'm like, well, Western medicine's making me worse. I don't really have any other alternatives at this point. I guess I just dive into the resources that I have 100%, faith, confidence, and see how it works out. Now, it still did take a while. I think it was a couple-year journey of like really figuring everything out. But I attribute meditation and mindfulness to over 85% of my healing journey, just giving my body the ability to let the sympathetic, the parasympathetic nervous systems reset, balance themselves, let the body come back into a place of self-healing. And I was able to recover completely naturally, even though doctors still to this day say there is no cure. You definitely can heal yourself from just about anything with mindfulness, meditation. There's many other like things that we can utilize, whether it's dietary change, mindset change, dealing with past traumas, getting that conditioning out of the mind and body. There's many ways to tackle it, but the key is give the body the resources that it needs to go back into its own deep healing mode. And I think there's probably nothing more powerful than meditation for that. And then also specific dietary changes, which don't like overtax your body and your nervous system.
Right. So a couple of things in there. One, like, in healing yourself, and is this where the mind body, like the connection starts? Is like we have to, because we can feed ourselves properly from like nutrition, right? And still have issues,
Of course.
right? And so
Yeah.
is it more of a that mindset has to happen first?
I think it does. I think that we have to start thinking about ourselves as having mind, body, soul, emotions,
Mhm.
all of these things. These are like all different facets of a gemstone. We are that one gemstone, but we have all these different facets that you can see things through or reflect right light out of.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand all of these different pieces and that they all work together and synergize to make a whole complete human being, it's very difficult because usually whatever that weakest link is, that's what needs to be taken care of to bring
Mhm.
things a little bit more back into balance. I was going through a lot of other things in my life at that time. Like I said, I was a scientist. I was doing animal testing, which was
Mhm.
really taking a toll on me. I didn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Didn't make sense to me why, in the name of health and wellness, we test on and kill living creatures. I'm like,
Right.
when you think about it like a 4 or 5 year old child. Oh, I want to
Yeah.
go kill the world. So what am I going to do that? Go kill hundreds of little mice a day.
Mhm.
Does that make any sense
Right.
in
Yeah.
any way of thinking about it, like to an innocent human mind? Probably
Yeah.
not. So I figured there had to be better ways out there, and the universe showed me very directly through my own experience, yes, there are better ways. Now, I'm not shunning Western medicine. We
Sure.
all need it. You need to go get surgery. You need to patch yourself up again. Absolutely. There is nothing better.
Yeah.
But over 90% of the diseases people face nowadays are what are known as lifestyle
Mhm.
diseases, which means they're based off of our choices, our decisions, our eating, our exercise, or lack of it, and really what's going on with our mental health and hygiene.
Right.
And there's a lot of information out there about nutrition and exercise, but there's honestly not a ton of information about mental health and hygiene. And
Yeah.
I think that that has become the weakest link for a lot of people. They just don't know how do I practice mindfulness in a productive way? How do I meditate? What are the differences between those things? And what are those differences going to facilitate in my life? Because if you
Yeah.
have specific goals you want to hit, you need to take a path to get to those goals that's going to work. And meditation and mindfulness are 180 degrees different from each other. They're both very effective, but at different things.
Yeah. Well, and part of that from like the Western standpoint is, in my opinion, we get so caught up in, the goals and the achievements and the successes, and we forget that like if we take a step back and sort of like you said, like we look at the path and go like, okay, but we have to take the time, whether it's meditation or mindfulness, or we have to take the time to sit and be with ourselves, which I think a
Yes.
lot of people don't want to do and don't
A
like to
lot of
do.
people can't. Like they're
Yeah.
terrified to be alone with their thoughts and their feelings.
Hmm.
That's why there's constant distraction, whether it's the TV that's on in the background, the music playing, kids running around and talking. People surround themselves with noise all
Yeah.
of the time, just so that they
Yeah.
don't have to listen to their thoughts or truly deeply feel their feelings.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself puts pressure on your nervous system. You're not
Mhm.
giving your body what it needs to properly process through an emotion. And if you can't process emotions, they get stored and locked in the body.
Right. Well, and then you have those moments where something does happen and you
Mhm.
go, well, where'd that come from? Because you didn't take the time, two weeks ago, 2 months ago, however long it was ago, when that small trauma that reacted and
Yeah.
created bigger trauma down the road, or reminded you of bigger trauma, but you just never addressed it because you never took the time to say, how does my body feel?
Yeah. Or how do I feel about this? What is
Right.
actually going on? And sometimes things take a little bit of time to process. And you may need to check in with yourself multiple times at different time points. But yes, we all need to allow ourselves time and space to actually feel. We have become so distant from true human connection due to the pandemic. I think the rise of social media,
Yeah.
instant gratification of super short form content that is out there. Yeah, artificial intelligence is really wreaking havoc on a lot of things. It's doing so
Yeah.
much good, but also so much bad for mental health at the same
Right.
time. But we've
Right.
got all these different pieces which have taken us a little bit further away from our humanity and our connecting to ourselves and others in a meaningful way. And it's very detrimental to your mental and emotional health. And if your mental and emotional health is suffering, your physical health will eventually suffer as well too.
Right. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you look back at the Eastern traditional medicine, traditional way of healing, it's more about balance, right?
I would say it's
Like,
more about harmonizing and
right.
synergizing. Like
Okay.
it's never about bringing anything into balance. I don't like that word. And I talk about it in my books. They say
Yeah.
if the universe were to ever truly come into balance, that's what happens at the end of the universe. True balance would mean that this created world ceases to exist because nothing is ever meant to actually be in true balance. But we
Okay.
need to harmonize and synergize different
Yeah.
pieces. So in our own physical body constitutions, like in Ayurveda or Chinese medicine, they look at this elemental approach, like five
Right.
elements. Chinese medicine, five elements. Ayurveda, they talk about three doshas, but if you study it in more detail, they break it down to five elements. So
Yeah.
I prefer to just start with the elements because when you do that, you not only talk about physical health, you can get really into a deep understanding of psychological and emotional temperament with
Right.
people. So we've all got these very unique, distinct compositions, which is utilizing all of these different elements in different amounts and frequencies. So when you learn how to harmonize those properly so that they're working well with each other, you can bring your body back into a self-healing place. A lot of things like that happen when we don't take care of ourselves. It's just like we're not honoring all the pieces of what we are. And since
Right.
everyone is unique and has a unique constitution, we all need to have a slightly unique way to getting better. Maybe for someone, 15 minutes of mindfulness and meditation a day is great, but then they need to go do 45 minutes of physical activity. Maybe for another constitution type, you're going to reverse that. Maybe they need to sit and actually meditate and be silent for 45 minutes. And then that 15 to 20 minutes of physical activity is enough to keep their mindset and their mood elevated. But it's about getting to know yourself and what your constitution is and what your body and your mental state needs.
Right. And everybody's a different,
Yeah,
mixture of those five elements.
exactly.
And that's one of the things that I think gets difficult in the Western world because we all want to say, oh, hey, this thing worked for you, it's going to work for me, right? And that can even be difficult, like in the same household, right? In the same household, because spouses are going to be different, and everybody's going to be, and so it's like,
and it goes against this Western notion of let's take this pill and it will fix all of our problems for everyone, because we're not facing a bacteria or a virus. Not that there's a cure for a virus anyway, right? But bacteria, you don't just go take an antibiotic and get rid of it, because we are made a little bit differently. So we have to take care of these pieces differently. So when it comes to meditation and mindfulness, it should be personalized, just like we are getting into more personalized, targeted therapeutics. Like when it comes to cancer research and immunology, we're finding a lot more personalized, targeted things that are focused specifically towards the individual and what their specific problem is. But in general, there's very few people still yet who relate to mindfulness and meditation in a personalized way. Like some teachers will give more personalized mantras, but it's usually like the selection of 9 or 10 very specific bija mantras that they would give. The approach that I take is a little bit different. It's helping people to analyze what is your elemental constitution and understanding each one of those 5 elements relates to a different sensory perception. So earth, water, fire, air, and space relates, like earth relates to smell, water relates to the sense of taste, fire to sight, air to touch, and then space or ether element to sound. So when you know the ones like that you're strongest in, like your top couple, I work on helping people to understand how you create a meditation technique that's going to leverage those ones that are your strengths. Like for me, for example, fire and space or ether element are very strong. So like fire, visualization and sound are very powerful for me. So when I utilize meditations that start off like with mantra and visualizations, those are very powerful and very quickly effective for me. If I try to go to meditations that rely on breath work, because I don't have a lot of air element in my constitution, I feel like I would rather die than to sit there for 20 to 30 minutes and meditate. And
Yeah.
it's one of the things I experienced very early on in my trajectory. I had been given a couple of different techniques. One was almost 100% aligned. One was almost 100% unaligned.
Mhm.
If I had only been introduced to the bad one for me, not for
Right.
other people,
Right.
I would have not had any faith in Eastern traditions, mindfulness, meditation. I'd be like, this is garbage. This doesn't work, and walked away. I bet that
Yeah.
sounds very familiar, right? A lot of people
Oh,
say that.
yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, it's because no one actually taught you to meditate to your type.
Right.
If you're taught to meditate to your type, not only will it be effective for you, it will be effective much more rapidly, and you're going to start noticing the effects of it much more quickly.
Yeah. And that becomes then like that harmonization that you're talking about is, when you're able to find the one that fits for you,
Mhm.
then you start seeing those results almost like compounded, right? Like it's
Exactly.
like the healing piece, not just the mind healing, the emotional healing, the physical healing starts to happen. And then once you get some traction, then that euphoria hits of like, oh my gosh, this is working, this is great, this is,
Mhm.
and that energy shift that happens with that is massive. And that's when you see people and you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in 6 months and you're a totally different person.
Exactly, exactly. And for me, it was a matter of 6 months to night and day difference of
Mhm.
meditating every single day, even if it was just that 10 or 15-minute, very short technique. So when I was in my like late 20s, when I started meditation, I had to take Xanax pretty frequently because
Mhm.
I was getting pretty regular panic attacks at that point in time. Within 6 months of doing the consistent meditation with good technique that worked for me, I never had to take any anti-anxiety medicine ever again. I
Yeah.
never had another panic attack, never even came close to on the verge. But I started seeing the benefits of it within the first 1 to 2 months. I saw
Mhm.
a drastic cutback in all of these things. But within 6, it was like no looking back.
Wow. That's
Mhm.
awesome. And like it's a good thing that like you said earlier, the Western medicine is there for a reason. It's there as like to close the gap, to help us in that urgent, extreme time. But it's not something that we should rely on, for a lifetime, because there's so many other modalities out there.
And not for mental health care in particular. If
Yeah.
you talk to a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists out there, and they're very well aware, particularly for mental health, how detrimental some of these brain altering chemicals are. And then it becomes even more difficult to stabilize on your own,
Hmm.
like down the road. So
Yeah.
if it can be avoided, I mean, there's some people who are going to need to be on drugs for mental health if they have a serious mental illness.
Right.
But if it's for something like anxiety, depression, sadness, loneliness, whatever the problems are we're facing, there are definitely other resources available at your disposal that should be tried first.
Right. And so how do you how do you talk to somebody who is and right now, we're a couple years out of the pandemic, and science is still a big word in the media, right? Like
Yeah.
validating things and understanding where's the science and all those things. Like, so somebody that goes into the doctor's office because they're dealing with depression or their anxiety or one of those mental health issues, and they go in expecting to get a prescription,
Mhm.
right? Like, how do we make that mindset shift for society to say there's something else first before we
Well,
go there?
there are research studies out there, and quite a few at this point, that have been done on different forms of meditation, but a lot on transcendental meditation because it's been
Mhm.
around for so long and so widely practiced, that do show the efficacy for many, many different things. And I think that a lot of doctors nowadays, thankfully, are getting a little bit more woken up, and they
Mhm.
don't want to prescribe drugs as a first line resource. I think some of
Yeah,
them always will. Unfortunately,
right.
we have to be mindful of the people that we're going to, and hopefully look at all of the possibilities. But if someone already just has a mindset of just give me the pill to solve it, I don't think they're going to actually give meditation a fair shot. They may have to go through the process of taking the pill, realize, hey, this really isn't
Yeah.
working too effectively for me, and I have a personal desire to want to find
Mhm.
something else. Because if that desire doesn't start from inside of you, it's really hard to motivate anyone to change. Even if a doctor's
Right.
saying you need to lose 20 pounds, 50 pounds, whatever it is, get diabetes, pre-diabetes under control, just drop the weight for a number of reasons. Most people don't listen to that either, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think people have to literally want to feel better. They have to be personally motivated to feel better, whether that's I want to be able to go run around with my children more without aches and pains or
Mhm.
getting fatigued or with these mental health issues that make me feel like I just want to isolate and do nothing. Or if it's that they want to feel better for themselves,
Right.
people have to come to that point within themselves. And then I think they'll be like willing to look for resources for that. But this is really a mindset shift because all of these techniques, if it's meditation, mindfulness, dietary changes, they all require time and consistency.
Right.
Time combined with consistency equals effective results.
Yeah.
But if you
Yeah.
don't get those two pieces together, you won't see those efficacious results.
Yeah. And that, I think that's one of the things that's, like you said earlier, we're all looking for that quick fix and that pill that's going to just change everything.
Yeah.
And so to change, to really the mindset shift that really has to change is slow down. Like slow everything down, slow the process down, take the
Don't
time.
expect immediate gratification on
Yeah.
anything, because anything that's going to be meaningful in your life is not going to come to you in 10-second snippets on Instagram
Right.
or
Right.
TikTok or whatever platform people are
Right.
utilizing
Yeah.
at this moment in time. That is just not the way that efficacious change works, and it's not the way that meaning and purpose is created.
Right. And so as I told you before we started recording, this episode's going to drop in the middle of January. And so we're going to, people are going to be getting this right about the time when they're like, oh, okay, my New Year's resolution's failing,
Yeah.
or I want to give
Over
up because,
95% of people, they're
right.
going to fail at their resolutions.
Yeah.
Let's not be in that 95% come this new year.
Right. And so how much, as we talked about like health earlier, and like the mind shift that has to happen first to be able to say, okay, this is, and I know a lot of people associate it to, what's your why? And so that's your driving force. But I think a lot
It's
more finds into like who are you and why are you making these changes? Not like, the why is driving me to do these things, but like, what's my purpose in this?
Yes, what is your purpose and your why in doing it? But I like to make things a lot more like simple and
Mhm.
practical for people. You know why we can't keep New Year's resolutions?
No.
Because we set New Year's resolutions to do these big, hairy, audacious goals, usually
Right.
things that we haven't been able to manage anyway. Then we say, I'm going to do this in the new year. I'm going to take this big struggle and I'm going to go do it. Well, can you honestly sit and tell me, do you have one single routine that you do every day right now that you madly enjoy doing?
Right.
I mean, how many people can say yes
Yeah.
to
Right.
how many people can say, yes, I have one thing I do consistently every day that I enjoy?
Right.
That is the problem.
That's
If
yeah.
people have not cultivated consistency doing something that they like doing,
Mhm.
whether that's reading a book or starting your day with a cup of coffee or tea, listening to your favorite song, maybe opening the newspaper, it can be something super simple. Maybe it's going
Sure.
for a walk before you start your workday. If you are not consistent with something you like, you will never, ever, ever be consistent with something that you don't like.
Right.
So the
Well,
key is in cultivating a consistent routine that you actually enjoy, because then
mhm.
the mind will always get comfort out of consistency. Even
Yeah.
if it's something you don't like, eventually you're going to start being comforted by doing it, because that's just how your brain chemistry works.
Yeah.
Brains like consistency. They like to form new neural connections.
Yeah.
So start by creating that daily habit that you enjoy. Then you're going to give yourself a fighting chance for doing the things that you don't.
Well, and to go back to, the different chakras and finding out who you are and what works for
Yes.
you, like you also, there's so many different ways to go about, like physical exercise, which is I know is
Oh,
a
yeah.
big one on everybody's New Year's resolution, right?
Yes.
There's so many different ways to go about proper nutrition and getting the right vitamins and minerals and all of that stuff that you
And
need, right?
nutrition goes far beyond that too. There's a
Right.
whole other bucket of nutritional psychology and how foods affect hormones in
Right.
your body and creation of serotonin and dopamine. Like, even though
Yeah.
serotonin is a brain hormone, most people don't know that 90% of it is made in your gut based on
Right.
what you eat.
Right.
So eating the right foods, having enough probiotics, which is that good microbiome in your gut. But to have a healthy microbiome, you need prebiotics, which is
Mhm.
essentially fiber. A long time ago, well, even to this day, a lot of doctors still think that fiber is just about proper elimination. Like, no,
Right.
that's the food for your microbiome.
Yep.
You need to give your body a lot of soluble and insoluble fiber. That is the food for your microbiome. That in and of itself is going to improve your mental health. But if you
Yeah.
start looking at foods from a standpoint of nutritional psychology and how they impact like your gut health, your microbiome, that's a whole other level of like taking care of yourself.
Right. Right. Um, but the big thing is there's so many options. You don't have to get stuck doing something you don't like.
No, and when it comes to food, we all have to eat food every single day
Right.
if we
Right.
want to be alive and healthy. So why not incorporate a few things into that which are known to boost serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin naturally, or things that are going to help bolster your immune response. I mean,
Yeah.
in the holidays, like we're in the holidays now, but mid-January, yeah, you want to set new goals for yourself anyway. Like, maybe this could be, I'm going to incorporate 5 new foods or 5 new spices into my routine, which I know are going to help elevate my mood naturally.
Right. Well, and one of the things that it just hit me as you're talking about that is, the people that get to, 100 years old, 105,
Mhm.
whenever that something happens in your local area, the news always covers it. And
Yeah.
typically they'll ask like, "Oh, what's your secret? How did you get there?" And it really makes the news when somebody goes, "Oh, I drink a Dr. Pepper a day," or and everybody's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's the secret." But it goes to show that you can have things that are not quote unquote perfectly healthy.
Yes.
But I would bet that most of those people that are making it there that are doing it and having a healthy life, like it's not just they've spent the last 10 years on a ventilator in a nursing home. They're vibrant, they're active, they're doing things,
Yes.
is because their mind body connection is super strong.
They have a sense of purpose and meaning in their
Yeah.
life. So, and that is a fuel that's going to keep you going. If you feel that your life lacks purpose or direction, or even if you have a purpose, but you're lacking a sense of meaning, like you don't feel that you are creating an impact and making a difference, yeah, your lifespan will definitely be shorter. And that comes
Yeah.
to our connections with other people. We have to be
Mhm.
interconnected and be of service to other people in some way. Otherwise, it's impossible to create meaning. Even in
Right.
your profession, your job, you are doing something that is being beneficial to someone else or some other
Right.
company along the way. Otherwise, we wouldn't have work. So
Yeah.
by the time people get to 100, if we're lucky enough to live that long, clearly we're hopefully not working at that stage,
Sure.
and your kids are grown and your grandkids are grown and all that stuff.
Right.
So you have to have learned how to create meaning for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's something, again, a lot of people don't do. They wrap it up into their job or their kids.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
need to create your own sense of purpose and meaning early and carry that with you, because that is what's going to lead you to old age and beyond.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that I saw that you've talked about before, in that you like to create an impact.
I do.
And is that something that you've had all your life, or was that something that came about as you went through your own healing journey, and it was like, okay, wait, this is now what I'm called to do, is make this impact on people.
I've always, I think, been very faith driven and impact driven. I've always wanted to make a difference in the world and help other people, even like people that I don't like or downright despise. I've
Mhm.
never had the ability to like wish ill or
Yeah.
negativity on people. I really want to see everyone thrive and be happy, because hurt people and people heal
Right.
other people. I don't want to be the cause of spreading any more negativity or discord or violence
Yeah.
in this world than necessary. So I think I've always been that way, but as I get older, it becomes more important and more pressing to create more impact and more meaningful change in the
Mhm.
world. Like that
Mhm.
it's been coming into laser focus.
Yeah.
So currently I'm working on creating a consciousness center in New York City and fundraising for my nonprofit organization for that.
Mhm.
I'd like to create a real center focused around consciousness and bringing different spiritual traditions together. And again, what it means to live these things and embody this and embody meditation and mindfulness and Eastern principles, as opposed to worshiping an externalized notion of God, which is how I would make the distinguishing factor between religion and spirituality. There's a big difference when you're using it to worship and when you're looking to bring it into a part of you to change yourself psychologically and emotionally and create impact.
Right.
So I'm trying to create this center here, which is going to help people with that, bringing it inwardly and kind of that on-the-job training of what does this really look like in your day-to-day life? What are the changes that you can expect to see if you're doing this in a way that is creating impact inside of you? And how do you navigate all the many difficult things that are going to happen along the way?
Right. Well, and it's funny, I've always had I was raised Catholic, but I've always had this issue with like the typical religion piece of, things, but I'm very spiritual.
Yes.
Right. And so, I'm in sort of like what you're talking about. It's like, I've been getting over the past 6 to 8 years, more and more connection. And part of it is as I talk to more people that are experts in this type of field and what's really going on and how do you make yourself healthy? How do you heal yourself? And because you can't heal yourself if you're always trying to take from other people, if
No.
you're trying to climb a ladder and it doesn't matter who you hurt.
Very true.
Right? Like you cannot heal yourself.
Karma's a bitch and it's going to come
Yeah.
back, especially for spiritual people, because we are living by the set of values that says we're supposed to put good into the world and treat people right. And then when you don't do that, when your thoughts, your words, your actions don't align, karma will more quickly come back and kick your ass because of that. Because we're asking to create meaning. And then if you are intentional about something and then you intentionally go against what you've put your energy into, the universe has a way of showing you pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, and that goes with judgment too. And I think that's a big piece of what our society and a lot of the Western world is that, we judge both other people, but also us against where we sit in society.
Yeah.
Right. That comparison factor. Comparing is all it is judging where you are in there. Right. And the more I've been able to get away from that and look at it more as just like an impact, like you look like I'm just sitting here trying to make an impact in people's life. And I want to raise the boat for everybody.
Right? Because yes, people fall into this comparison trap all the time. And it's really sad because we all have a different starting point and a different ending point. We're not on the same trajectory.
Right.
You are not on the same trajectory as any other person, but you need to know yourself well enough to know that. I mean, if you tune in, you're going to tune into all of the knowledge that is inside of you, what's come from your ancestors, what's in your genetics. For the people who believe in past lives, you'll be able to tap into that consciousness like that is a part of you and what it is like you are really supposed to be doing here in the moment. And that is not the same as anyone else. Your karmic liabilities and burdens are not going to be the same as your spouse, your children, or anyone that is there with you. And you have to be so personally accountable to your own path and trajectory just to say, hey, this other person, they're super successful. They have a lot of money. Everything seems easy. I guarantee you it's not.
Right.
It's just maybe you don't see those problems on the surface because no one broadcasts their problems on social media.
Exactly.
That's not what social is. Can we have a social media platform where we're like, oh, my day went to shit today?
Right.
Or we're like just like talking about all of the negative things, but you're never going to see that because people don't want to be judged.
Yep.
And that's because there's not enough. I would say there's not enough love in the world, but I think it's because people are afraid of showing caring and nurturing and love because then they're afraid of being judged or rejected even for that because so many people don't know how to receive it.
Right. That's true.
So we just have to project a false image out there and just pretend and keep up with the Joneses. And it's a very sad state of affairs we have found ourselves in. But now we're back to the start of our conversation with mental health issues and why people need to cultivate mindfulness, inner discernment, critical thinking skills, because we need to learn to be accountable to ourselves and our own trajectory and have the motivation to do that.
Right. And our own trajectory is ours. Like it's not it nobody else is the same person as I am. Like I'm the individual, I'm
Exactly.
unique. I've got all my own experiences that have led me to where I am that nobody else can, truly understand the same way that I understand them. Like I can write them all down,
Exactly.
somebody can read them. It's it's never going to be the same. Um, and and until we come to grips with that and understand, like, okay, now how do I heal myself internally, deal with the traumas, deal with the different things, address those things,
Mhm.
and some of that can be just totally personal to myself,
Yeah.
meditation by myself, whatever. Some of it can be with a counselor, with a psychologist, with a, depending on how deep and how much of
Mhm.
an issue it is, and not labeling that, not being like, oh my gosh, what you need a counselor? Oh my gosh, what's
Hey,
wrong
I
with
go
you?
to therapy every
Like,
week.
you
Sometimes
know,
it's like twice a week. This
yeah,
should just be like standard repertoire for people
right,
because we all need a person that we can go spew our garbage to. And
yeah,
honestly, that shouldn't be your spouse.
right,
I'm not saying you shouldn't talk to your spouse. You should talk to your spouse about everything if you have
sure,
one, but we need an outlet for those things that is not being like dumped on our loved ones all the time. And
right,
it would be very helpful if everyone had a trained resource that they can go to talk about problems, just to have someone listen, and if someone wants it, be given meaningful solutions to help combat them. But sometimes
yeah,
just the listening piece is enough.
right. And
Hmm.
then you start to realize that, okay, well, a truly, if you want to call it successful person, a truly successful person is somebody who knows who they are and doesn't care about what anybody else thinks about them.
Exactly. They say that that's one in the kind of the spiritual circles, this being immune to either praise or blame is like one of the final hurdles that people cross through before you hit a point of self-realization or
Mhm.
self-actualization or whatever people want to call it. But
Yeah,
that's like, that is one of the final
yeah,
hurdles. It's like you just really don't care anymore. Not even if someone is saying something bad about you, but it doesn't like phase you if they say something nice. I'm not
yeah,
going to say that you're still going to feel the impact of it, but it's not going to sway you from your trajectory. There's a lot
right,
of people who get very swayed based on what other people think.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, if someone comes up and says something hurtful, I think anyone's going to feel that. Or someone says something nice. Like I go out, I get compliments like on my hair a lot because it's like very
mhm,
unique, right? So it's like,
yeah,
yeah, it feels good for a couple seconds, but then you move on. But then if
right,
someone walks up and says something mean, then you're like, okay, that person's a jerk or having a bad day, a couple seconds, and then you move on.
right,
So many people they get derailed for the longest time based
yeah,
on things like that. So
yeah,
yes, you have to get to a point to where you're very self-stable, self confident, really believe in yourself. And a lot of that is around creating like that meaning in your life. It's not just having a purpose, it's like having meaning that's tied to that purpose.
right,
Once you have that, these other things, they just don't matter as
yeah,
much.
yeah.
Mhm.
Um, well, and it's interesting because I'm a runner and a competitive runner still, and um, last March I went and ran a race and won a national championship in my age group. And it was a goal I've
Congratulations.
had for my whole life. Like I'd always wanted to compete and win something big on a national level.
Mhm.
And so I finally got my first one. And what's funny is that like people are like, oh, is that? I'm like, "No, it doesn't change me at all. I'm still the same
You're
guy.
still you.
Like
Yeah,
it's just a check mark on my list of things that I wanted to accomplish in my life. But
exactly.
like it's not like I crossed the finish line and all of a sudden was like, oh, I'm this totally different person. Like, no.
Exactly,
Like,
right? I mean, I'm a competitive ballroom dancer. I love
mhm,
competing. I love winning. I do go and compete and win. But yes,
yeah,
it just doesn't change you at the
no,
end of the day. It's just you got to have goals for yourself
sure.
that have nothing to do with anyone else or what they're saying. It's like, hey, I want to do this for me.
Right. And I
Yeah.
think that's when you can look back and go, and a lot of people question like, because as an entrepreneur, working for myself, doing the things I
Mhm.
do, like my work schedule is crazy, and
Oh
like,
yeah.
I sometimes I work 4 hours on Sundays, and Mondays are off, or, sometimes I work every day, but it's only for like 2 or 3 hours a day.
Yep.
And people are like, how in the world do you do all that? And I'm like,
I get the same questions. Like,
it's who I am. So
how do
it's
you run
just,
a company? How do you run a nonprofit? How do you do all your competitive dance on top of that?
mhm,
Like, I'm like, priorities, people, and
right,
work is not at the top of my list.
right, right.
And they're like, you run a company and work's not your number one priority? No, it's a priority. I am my priority. My
Yep.
health, my fitness, making sure I hit the gym or Pilates or walk and doing my daily sadhana and spiritual practice.
Mhm,
That's my priority. And everything else falls around that.
yeah. And I think that's a big piece of, you know, in our mindset, as we start to, like, okay, if I'm listening to this, I'm saying, okay, I know I need to make some changes. I want to have a more purposeful life. I want to find out who I am and be able to connect all the dots and have this like work for me. Like, that mindset shift of really just breaking down, who am I first,
Yeah.
right? And get rid of who the world says I am, who, my employer says I am, my spouse says I am, who all these things. Like, you can take all those pieces as a part of, oh, they see me as this. Okay, well, what does that
Yes,
mean?
they're all facets of you. But at some point, everything you have learned or been taught or heard about yourself or the world, you're going to have to reevaluate through your own
Mhm.
filter and life experience and validate whether it is true or not and put
Yeah.
your own definition on it.
Yep.
And
And then
that's
when
what
you,
I call inner discernment. I mean,
yeah,
that is pivotal for many spiritual teachings. It's definitely pivotal for the paths that I walk and follow. That foundation of inner discernment. Some people say critical thinking. Some yogis would call it like buddhi yoga.
right.
Like Ramakrishna,
Mhm.
Ramana Maharshi, all these people had this like strong, strong, strong foundation of inner discernment. And it really is, it's crucial. You have to be able to identify what is you, what was
Yeah,
given to you by someone else that you accepted, and
right,
what did you choose for yourself? And in this whole mixture, where are you putting your energy and your purpose, and like what direction are you pushing yourself into what you want to become?
right,
Is it into the unconscious? This is what everyone else has handed to me. Or how much of it have you made conscious yourself and made a decision that, yes, I want to own this label or this title,
right,
these 5 pieces of this facet of my gem, and I want to put my energy in that direction.
right. Well, and when you do that, like, and it's the correct way, right? You're not fighting your energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you can go and say, okay, this is who I am. That's my purpose. All my energy is now flowing this way, and it's the correct way. The universe is going to reward you for that,
You're
right?
going to feel better
And like,
because you're going to have more energy, focus, clarity.
mhm,
When you're actually following your purpose and think it's something like that gives you this inner energy. I call it inner prosperity. It's like an
mhm,
inner fuel that we have, but you'll feel like you just have the energy to accomplish everything that you need to. A lot of times when we get fatigued and tired in the middle of our days, it's because not always, but a lot of times it's because you're not really doing something that is furthering purpose or something meaningful. You're
mhm,
doing something that is a little bit out of alignment with what your constitution is, or something
right,
that's actually bringing you a sense of meaning. Because when you're pursuing meaning, you're going to usually have this near boundless energy that you're just going
yeah,
to be able to keep going.
yeah,
So if you're constantly feeling tired, fatigued, worn out, burnt out, stressed out, it's a pretty good sign that you need to make some changes.
right. And now those things are going to happen,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Like, because we all have to do
Absolutely.
those tasks that we don't
Oh,
want to
yeah.
do, right? Whether it's
Yes.
the laundry or whatever. It's like, there's
Hmm.
always tasks that we don't want to do that don't fall in line with, who we are
That's part
purposefully.
of life, though.
But that's,
That's adulting, and like
yeah.
we all need to deal like with that stuff. But yes, as long as you're doing enough of the things that do give you energy and fuel,
Mhm.
it's going to make the rest of that stuff so much easier.
Yeah. And not getting caught up in, like you said earlier, the 5 seconds of somebody saying something really nice to you.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing happens inside you. And the same thing happens with your schedule. Don't get caught up with the fact that, oh my gosh, I've got all these things to do and these chores to do and these things that I don't want.
Yeah.
Like, just do one at a time,
I love my
knock it
list.
off,
Let
and
me
move
tell you,
on.
man.
Yeah.
My lists, my project management stuff, I love just checking stuff off because yes,
Yeah.
you can just take one thing at a time, it becomes manageable. But speaking of nice comments, we should all learn to say nice things to ourselves every day.
Yeah.
It has a very similar impact to other people saying nice things to you, whether
Yeah.
you want to believe it or not. Or go have a conversation with a nice AI chatbot. It's still going to make you feel good.
Right.
This is the thing. Like there's always tips. There's always little tricks and things we can do to improve our mood and mindset. And they work. But yeah, start with some positive self-talk. Like get up in front of the mirror and be like, oh, I look good today. Or I love the way my skin looks. Or I'm having a great hair day. Or if you're me right now, I'm like, man, I'm in New York City and the wind has blown my hair everywhere. So that's not great, but I'm alive and thriving and I've accomplished a lot. So this is a good day. You know, the more like you learn how to talk to yourself in a positive way, you're also going to be putting out the subconscious energy where other people are going to talk to you in more of a positive way.
Right.
People can feel what you project, not what you want, not what you want to be. They're going to feel who you are.
Yeah. Well, and then, like you said, that drives the conversations or lack of conversations, right? So then you can go to like I was in a meeting yesterday and, you know, had multiple conversations with multiple people there in like the downtime of the meeting. But I've also been in that same situation where I wasn't having a good day and I sit there and like, nobody wants to talk to you. And you just sit there and then you start going in your head of like, why does nobody want to talk to me? What's wrong with me? Blah, blah, blah.
I know.
You know, and so that negative path, just like you said, that projecting. So it's like, and that's where the little bits of when you know what your thing is, whether it's breath work or meditation or, you know, whatever that is, when you go into a setting that scares you or nervous or something, or you're, you know, like, okay, I'm going to this, you know, party and I've got to be on, I've got to be fun, I've got to be whatever, and I don't feel it today. Then take 5 minutes before you go in there and reset yourself.
Yeah. And it's so funny to me how so many people don't think that they have the ability to do that or that it won't work. It's like, have you tried it? Because if you tried it, you know, it does have an impact. This is why we do sadhana each and every morning. Meditation, mindfulness, maybe chanting, other spiritual practices, is because it does set the mind up in the right way so that you can have those good thoughts and good feelings come to you throughout the day. Like anything you do in this physical world will have an impact on something that comes after it. So you chant a mantra, you sit and meditate, you do a visualization, you go eat your good foods or healing spices to boost your mood naturally. All of this is going to have an impact and effect because it was a tangible something that you did.
Yep.
Even if it's something, and not even if, especially if it's small and consistent things. Small and consistent things will drive more meaningful change than the big things. The big things don't happen that often, but it's the small things that happen on a daily basis. You get that stuff right, you're going to find that your life is right.
Yep. And it doesn't have to be, you know, earth-shattering. You know, you don't have to sit there and think like, oh, I got to come up with the next great thing that's gonna, you know, change things. It's the little bitty things that as you try them, go, okay, well, this makes me feel better. Okay, then do that.
Yeah.
Like it's
none of it is rocket science. It's a lot of small and simple changes. Make small and simple changes to your diet, your sleep, adequately hydrate, get enough movement, and do things which foster a sense of joy. Maybe that's dancing, singing, pottery, painting. I mean, everyone has got some sort of a creative expression, boxing, running, whatever it is. You got to like find those things that just kind of make you feel joyful. I mean, that's why I love dance so much. It's like my happy place because it's combining music and movement together and like where I'm dancing with someone else. So you have like that partnering there. It's like, it's one of my happy places that I go to.
Right. And that movement piece is, and I think this is what drives me nuts as an exercise professional. What drives me nuts is when people say, oh, I hate to exercise. I'm like, I don't care about exercise, move.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you say move and they go, oh, well, what do you mean? Like, okay, we can go put some music on and dance for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You're moving.
Go for a walk. Go.
It doesn't have to be as stressful as I've got to go for a run or I've got to get on a bike or I've got to go to the gym. Like for some people that works and it's great. But for others, it's movement that's more important from a longevity health span standpoint than it is trying to like fit a prescribed exercise routine in.
Exactly. Exactly. And there's going to be things you find that work at one point in your life that you're going to get tired of or
Right.
just don't work any longer. And then you need to find something else. And that's
Yeah.
perfectly normal too, because we all grow and evolve in our needs as we grow and evolve and change.
Right. And as you go through the different life cycles of,
Hmm.
whether you've got kids at home, kids are out of the home, you're going through different stages in adjusting to that as you
Yes.
go through it is hugely important as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like at this point in my life, I do love going and just getting some cardio in at the gym. I love Pilates reformer. I mean, I'm a certified yoga teacher.
Mhm.
I don't sit and teach yoga classes. I don't get the most for myself out of that
Yeah.
anymore. I find like Pilates reformer and I feel like gold.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen by sitting and doing yoga asana for me. But that's a very conscious realization, so it's
Right.
like you have to know yourself well
Yeah.
enough to know what's going to work and what's not, because there's always going to be people who are going to praise and there's always going to be people who are going to criticize. So
Sure.
again, know yourself, know your trajectory, know what works and what doesn't, and then those other things become a lot more irrelevant.
Yep. And then, like you said, like I was at a choir concert for my son the other day, and a couple of the people that we, other parents that we know that were sitting there and we're talking about different things as we're waiting for this everything to start, and they were just like, "Oh yeah, I mean, like, Jerry, you run everywhere. You're crazy. Like these other people were exercise, but you're like on a different level of crazy." And I could easily have taken that and been like, "Oh my gosh, they think I'm nuts. They think
I'd be
there's
like, why,
something
thank
wrong
you.
with me." What?
That's
But I
awesome.
was like, "Yeah, I am. I'm crazy. I know. Yeah,
Exactly.
I'm different."
Thank you
Like
for acknowledging that in me.
exactly. Like I want to be different. Like that's,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't want to fit in with everybody else's,
No,
this is the way it's supposed to be, because
no.
when you do that, you lose your uniqueness and you don't know who you are.
Exactly. I've always been the black sheep and I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I completely own that now. It's like, yeah, there's nothing in my life that is normal. I mean, if someone walked up and called me normal, I would take it as a huge insult. Like
Right.
that would trigger me and push my buttons a little bit beyond the realm that it should, to be honest. Because I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, there is nothing normal about this. I know
Yeah.
how much work I put into being conscious and intentional,
Mhm.
and normal is definitely out of alignment with conscious and
Yeah.
intentional.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
So, before we wrap up, I wanted to give you a chance to tell people how they can get in touch with you, follow you, a little
Sure.
bit about the nonprofit. So if they wanted to get involved with that.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm very easy to find online. All of my social media handles are at Jaya Jaya Myra, my website, jayajayamyra.com. There's also information about my nonprofit on there. I have an impact deck that people can download and take a look at. As I mentioned earlier, though, we are fundraising right now to start an actual consciousness center here in New York City. Don't worry, even if you're not in New York, we plan on
Right.
doing a lot of remote and globally accessible classes and workshops for people so that you can have the one-on-one interaction. How do I learn my elemental type? How do I find the type of meditation that's going to work best for me? How do I create daily rituals that like work for my unique type? And just the other classes and offerings that we're developing as well. I want to make a lot of these accessible to anyone, no matter where they are, but have a nice center, almost clubhouse environment for the people
Right.
in the city here, because New York City is high stress, too many
Mhm.
people, yet very lonely at the same time, which probably
Right.
makes sense, but it's the more people you're surrounded by, the more lonely people can feel because
Yeah.
there's that lack of meaningful connection. So
Yeah.
I want the center here to bridge that gap and start enabling more meaningful connections with people, both within themselves, but also with other like-minded individuals.
Right. Well, and one of the things that can be difficult in those situations where there's a lot of people and it's stressful and you've got so much going on,
Yeah.
is that you get stuck in that situation of, well, I'm too busy to find out what's going on in their life.
Yeah.
And, oh, well, they're too busy to find out what's going on in mine. So we just don't talk,
Mhm.
as opposed to, okay, slow down, talk.
Mhm.
And, and a lot of times when we actually talk to each other, we find out that somebody's got a connection somewhere that's going to help us break through to the next thing that we need to break through to.
Oh, exactly. I firmly believe that right now, at this moment in time, everyone already has within their sphere of influence all the tools that they need to take meaningful steps forward. The
Mhm.
problem is we just often don't see those connections or
Right.
understand where they are or even what they are. But that's
Yeah.
kind of part of this universal cosmic joke that everything is already right there in front of you, but you have to do the work to actually see it, acknowledge it, find it,
Right.
and then go and take advantage of it.
Right. And sometimes that work is that peaceful time by yourself. It's
Yes.
not what people would consider like I'm working, I'm busy, it's like sometimes you got to stop and go,
That's hard too.
what is the next step?
It's hard to sit with yourself and your thoughts. And you will find when you start to do it, it does take a lot of energy to just sit with yourself.
Yeah.
It takes just as much energy as going out and doing other things, which is why another reason I think that people don't do it, because the energy is already going so much outward. People don't reserve enough of that to go inward. But I think if we flip that a little bit and we put our priority on going inwards and understanding ourselves, that actually sustains and creates more fuel and energy that you can then have to give to other people.
Right. Well, perfect. So Myra, I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for being a guest. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you'd be like, okay, this is something that people really need to know about how to live that perfect, not perfect, but how to live their perfect life as far as like getting their mind body connection and understanding who they are?
Create that daily habit doing something you love. If possible, wake up before sunrise and greet the sun. Makes huge differences psychologically to get up before the sun rises. Document your experience. You will notice the difference. Don't take my word for it, but it is definitely game changing. I think those two things are fundamentally important. And just what I said, get good sleep, watch the things that you're eating, get up and move. Cultivate those practices, doing the things you love, small, simple things. Simple will lead to mountains of enormous change.
Yep. True. So thank you so much, Myra, for being a guest.
Thank you so much.
It's been great.
Thanks for checking out the Confidence Through Health podcast. Please subscribe, post a review, share this episode with those you love who need a little extra help with their health journey. Visit allinhealthandwellness.com to learn more about the coaching programs that I provide. All episodes are produced by the Social Media Cowboys, your source for all online marketing needs. Go to socialmediacowboys.com for more information.